The lesson.
Oh, yeah.
There were a lot of writers around before I even started in that. I mean, if you want to look at the history of Adelaide Graffiti and that sort of thing, you know, there were pieces and tags and stuff here by late 83. Certainly by early 84, was well and truly up and running. And by 85, it sort of became popular. And that's the sort of stage when you start talking about people, you know, every man and his dog's got a tag. And my brother had a tag in that. He ended up being a cop in that, you know, but everyone had a tag. But it just depended on what you did with it. It could be in the back of your school book, or it could be on every bus and every bus shelter going and all this sort of thing. It just depended on how far you wanted to take it. But you had a completely different sort of attitude to graffiti back then also, because, you know, it's fun, it's happening, it's in the movies, it's on the news, you know. It's all happy land sort of graffiti stuff. It's not until the damage bills start hitting and all the rest of it and the council starts, you know, counting the cost and all this sort of thing that people start to get a bit bloody pissed off about it all. And the whole illusion of it being something good and something new and, you know, the latest sort of money-making venture from America and that, it fades pretty bloody fast. And with it go a lot of the graffiti writers, because they start realising that, you know, girls don't hang out with graffiti writers. You don't make money out of making, you know, out of doing graffiti. Your parents are getting this shit. It's all fun and games until the cops start knocking on the door and that. And these sorts of things generally inevitably happen. Very few writers would get through their whole record or anything without getting a knock on the door. So, you know, the whole attitude towards graffiti changes. So, you know, and there were many early writers before me. Like I said, you know, when I started writing, you know, when you look at influences and that, like I was saying before, you know, you're looking at National Geographics, you're looking at record covers, you're looking at whatever you can get your hands on and that to be influenced by different styles and fashions and all this sort of stuff. You're just running blind, really. So in that regard, really, anybody that's got a bit more of a take on the subject and a bit more get up and go on that's out there tagging the streets and that, they're going to be your first-hand sort of influences, really. You can't Google anything, like I said earlier. So, you know, whatever you see in the street is going to influence you. So then we're talking, you know, we're talking about people like Wiki, we're talking about Sprint, Marl, Style, Bomber, and it really depended on which line you're on as well. Because, you know, now everything's sort of all found in one place, once again, the internet or whatever and that. Back in those days, it was very different. You're probably really only aware of whatever was going on in your particular area or your train line or within a few sort of stations of your train line and this sort of thing, you know. Even a trip to the city or whatever, and that was a big affair. And it wasn't until later on when they started having a few writers' benches, sort of meeting points for writers and that in the city and that. You know, Myers being one of them, the old Meyer building in Rundle Mall, which was the main one really. Before that, downtown and Hindley Street. That writers started meeting one another and exchanging ideas and that and realising, hey, there are other people on other lines and all this sort of stuff. If you're from the western suburbs, you know, love him or hate him and that, you probably were influenced by Sparky. If you're around Croydon or something or other, it could have been Suzie and Casbar. If you're from Gawler or whatever, it definitely would have been Captain Colour and Ecstasy. But there were other guys as well. There was Ace out there was Bonza. I mean, the list goes on really of different guys in different suburbs doing stuff, you know. So these are the sort of influences in that. Out of Harbour, you had the OK crew with, you know, Smear, Scunda, Blitz 202. Many different writers, you know, I couldn't name them all to be honest. There were that many of them. Around Salisbury and that, you had Cuban and Spree. You also had Crash and Craze were the big influences. These, you know, some of these guys were real artists at their time. I mean, Captain Colour was years ahead of his time, really. Later on in '86, you had people like Kano. He was just an absolute artistic genius, really. It had to be one of the best in Australia. I'm not going to, you know, that's no small statement. It's true. You know, and time has borne that out, really. You had other people that we found later on in that in Mount Gambier, you know, like Cab and Risk and Boots and Acree and Raid and, yeah, you know, other people out there that were doing their own thing and that. But, you know, it wasn't until these guys started meeting one another and exchanging ideas you realised what was going on in that. You know, so by the time, you know, and even Noarlunga and that, I shouldn't forget people like Rust, Run, and Freeze. I mean, these guys are all known by, Rust, Run and Freeze. Rust, Run and Tense. These people are all known by different names over the years and that. But, you know, and Chrome, Yeah, look, too many names to mention, to be honest. But, you know, they all sort of added something to what was going on that. And some of them were some pretty big names.
Mm. And these are all names that had some sort of influence
Oh,
on
big
you?
time, big time. You know, I remember by 86 and that, you know, there weren't too many trains running around the place that didn't have a rust run or banger tag on it. Now, these guys were doing run-ups like there was no tomorrow at the time on that, you know, and venturing into the yards and that way before I'd been there. And there are guys that went there slightly before them. But by 87 and that, yeah, personally, I started getting a bit more involved in that sort of thing and that. And, you know, and then other people were getting involved as well.
Mm.
You know, there was Sim, Kelkay, yeah, bunch of other people. Sway, Arms. Yeah, a lot of different guys having a go at it and that, you know. So, yeah, by 87 it sort of started to take off a bit and that's for sure, especially with a train scene. We were very late on that sort of thing, on a train scene really compared to other states in Australia. I mean, you know, I think most trains in Melbourne and Sydney, they probably did their first whole cars by 82, 83. We hadn't even been in a yard until 85.
Yeah, wow.
And therein lies the difference of a small town. But you're talking, Adelaide was a very different place back then. All the shops are shut on a Sunday. They close halfway through a Saturday and at 12 o'clock or whatever, that's it. It's a ghost town. There's tumbleweeds going through the city. That's great if you want to roll around the place of Texas and, you know, put your tags up and there's no cameras or anything back then and that, just roving, you know, police patrols occasionally or whatever and that sort of thing and that. But yeah, it's dead, man. McDonald's is open, downtown's open, the cinemas are open. And that's probably about it, man. There's no shopping like goes on these days, that's for damn sure. No late night shopping, you know, on weekends or, you know, Friday nights or any that sort of thing, I don't think. I don't know, a bit hazy about all that.
The lesson.
927. Oh, yeah.